Hello everyone, this is Mr. Ham from his basement. Just going to cover a few things about past weeks, and then I want to talk about what we're going to go through this third week of the research paper. First of all, let's talk about the working bibliography. So I'm just going to move over here and first of all give you an example of one of your students or one of your classmates who did a spectacular job of putting this together. First of all, I think the biggest mistakes that were made was in formatting. If you note here, and I'll give credit, I believe this is Josh Wardell's, one of the simplest things that you could do is to alphabetize properly. If you look at all of his sources here, if I can click on there and just go down, you'll see that everything's in alphabetical order according to the very first thing. He does have all, so far, looks like all authors on there. So that is something that Josh put together well. Another part is this indentation. He did a great job making sure that that was properly done. Those of you who did complete it on time should have gotten a response back, and many of you, I posted a link to the Purdue Online Writing Lab and gave you their works cited sample. If you have issues about what your source, what it should look like, what information should be there, that should be there as well. And if you have a particular difficult one, we certainly can talk about how to do that. On a second point, I would also like to pick out that maybe the other key error is many of you failed to provide scholarly sources. It doesn't mean that you have to have everything that is scholarly, but many of your topics, most topics, are really begging for that scholarly level. And so when you're looking at only newspapers, online magazines, things like that, you're not doing your due diligence to looking at the information. And finally, what I want to point out is look at the counter argument. You can't have all sources that are based on just the way that you want to write it. You have to address the counter argument. Most of you will have a counter argument, so that's one of the things that you want to make sure that you look at. All right, just a couple of recap things. Last week you were supposed to complete this Google form after you watched the how and why to cite videos based on when you're going to the whole purpose in citing in your paper, using the authoritative figure. It's something that I've analogized throughout last week about why you have to have good sources and why that brings credibility, and then just properly doing that in the first place. So that's an assignment that you should have completed by tonight, which is a Sunday night. A second thing, paraphrasing document. There was the overview. They gave you some samples. And then there are two practice sites that I am requesting that you do. It's going to benefit you in the long run, and they're fairly quick, and they give you a very good understanding of what a paraphrase is. And then you were supposed to hand this in via the Google Classroom, assignment 422, paraphrasing document. And then finally, through last week, you had most of the time to work on your note-taking. We talked about the just the note card system, and then also your online electronic copy system. And that brings us to week 3. So week 3, we are continuing with note taking. And so this is what we'll do. On Monday, since it's a late start Monday, we'll just allow this for any questions that you have about note taking. As we push forward, though, what we're really going to be looking towards is how we can organize the notes. This organization of your notes is really starting to take a look at, all right, I'm getting towards the end of finding information. I have information. I feel like I'm getting ready to write. So let's try to categorize, not just based on questions now. Now we're going to take one of your research questions and try to organize that. How am I going to write that? And very similar, if you want to work ahead to what we've talked about previously, is looking at this research essay as many mini essays. And so one guide question, research question, can be provided as a simple essay, and therefore you should look at your one question. How can I answer that? And think 1, 2, 3. It doesn't have to be 3 paragraphs. It could be more than 3 paragraphs. But think about the information that you have. How do I want to lay that out? So that's going to be organizing your notes, and we'll take a look at that on Tuesday. And then taking a look at this, we're looking at 431. This is your check, progress check number 2. At the end of week 3, this will be your assignments. You really should be done by next Sunday. So again, all throughout this week, you're taking notes, and then we're going to talk about how to organize those for those of you who are on track. And I suppose even if you're not on track per se, by Sunday, that's where you want to be able to find yourself saying, I'm for the most part done. Will I have to go back to a source here and there? Will I have to research? That's part of the writing process if that's the case. But for the most part, that's when we want to be done. And then finally, the other thing that we'll be focusing on is outlining. So once we actually organize our information, we're going to talk about how to outline, and we'll take a look at that due date coming up, and we'll discuss this in class as well, which we'll submit via Classroom. So that's this week in intermediate composition. Bring your questions and keep working hard. It'll pay off. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.